Check is proudly brought to you by First Capital Bank. Belief comes first.
All right. Good morning, Dr. B.
Good morning. How's the winter coming?
The winter is coming very spicy. One day it's cold, one day it's warm. One day my voice is clear, the next day it's not. So I'm a bit confused.
Well, sometimes a hoarse voice can be as a result of the topic of today, which is reflux. It's a very, very common problem. We get lots of questions about it, and I think, judging from the sort of questions, the majority of the reasons why people out there are getting this reflux, which basically means acid going up the windpipe, or rather the gullet and heartburn, is because of the things that they're doing to themselves. Now, for those that have never had heartburn, which is unusual, it's a burning feeling in the chest, caused by the stomach acid traveling up towards the throat. We call that reflux, and if it keeps happening, we call it gastroesophageal reflux, which the esophagus is the tube that connects the mouth to the tummy, and that tube is basically, when you swallow, it moves in one direction, and so food goes down into the stomach. Now, if it goes in the reverse direction, like there's too much acid in the stomach and leaks up, it goes into a bit of a spasm. We call it a nutcracker esophagus, where you just feel this really bad tightening around the chest. And often they come to see me as a heart doctor saying, I'm having a heart attack. And what we actually find is heartburn rather than a cardiac issue. I guess the classic thing is an unpleasant sour taste in your mouth, and that's the thing that people talk about. But people can talk about, a hoarse voice, sometimes repeated coughing, and sometimes hiccups keep coming back. This is often a sign that that gullet is really irritated by the acid that comes up there. Some people have a bad breath. Others have a feeling of being bloated and feeling sick. And your symptoms will probably be worse after eating or when lying down or bending over. So these are the common symptoms of heartburn. And lots of people get heartburn from time to time. And there's often no obvious reason why. But sometimes I've listed some of the reasons. And the commonest ones are certain foods and drinks. And the classic ones are things that are slightly acidic, like coffee or tomatoes, alcohol, fatty or spicy foods. And people can identify to say, Kante, if I'm going to have this mafresh, I'm going to get heartburn. And they'll still do it, but, they pay the price. And so that is another one. Those are the commonest foods. And another one actually is being overweight. Those that are overweight often have reflux because they're sitting on too much weight in the stomach. It actually pushes all the acid up. And people who are overweight tend to snack a lot, tend to snack on sort of starchy carbohydrate things, which are often acidic in nature. Pregnancy can cause it as well. If you're pregnant, baby is pushing up into your stomach, and as the baby grows and stretches, it may push the stomach right into a corner where then you get reflux. So those that have had pregnancies, particularly big pregnancies or twin pregnancies, know what I'm talking about. And somebody's asked, can stress and anxiety cause it? Definitely. If you're stressed, it affects lots of things, and the first thing it does affect is your gut. And everybody knows, about stage fright, or you're sitting in front of an examiner, or you're giving a lecture, and your stomach just begins to cramp up. And so the brain and the gut are very closely related. And last but not least, before we go into some questions, certain medicines, can cause excessive acid in the stomach, and the classic one is the one that people use like Smarties. And those are painkillers. This Brufen and Compral and
yes,
band. But all these, contain a lot of acid, and you may be taking it for pain in the joints, but then you suffer from a lot of reflux. So this is common. And just to start with a question here, because it was part of my concluding remarks, and somebody said, Laka, I've got something called a hiatus hernia. I'm not sure what it is. Tell me how this causes reflux. Well, a hiatus hernia basically is where there is a valve that prevents the acid from coming up into your gullet, and that valve and eventually becomes loose in some people. When it loosens up, that acid, which is supposed to go down from the stomach into your small intestine, actually goes back up, and then it rides up into your throat and then causes this terrible reflux. So it's a valve that's loose, and often what we do is we tell people it's just lifestyle issues, but if it's really bad, we actually have an operation. It actually tightens up that valve. So that's really important. And in terms of how to do it at home, how can you heartburn and acid reflux yourself? Well, we've talked about the things that cause it. So simple lifestyle changes that can help stop heartburn. And so eating smaller, more frequent meals rather than big, large meals, particularly at night. Try and make your meal at least 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed. If you're eating a heavy meal and you lie down within an hour or so, your stomach hasn't had time to transit that stuff into the intestine. So it just sort of bloats. So everybody knows what I'm talking about. If you have recurrent reflux, I often advise patients to raise one end of the bed by about 5 or 10 centimeters, so that you're actually lying at an incline, so everything actually goes downwards with gravity. And of course, we talked about trying to lose weight if you're overweight, and chill out into you finding that stress causes this acid. Don't eat foods or drinks that trigger your symptoms. Don't eat within 2 or 3 hours before bed. Don't wear tight clothing, particularly if you're going to bed. Of course, don't take too much alcohol before you go to bed, because alcohol is acidic. Take medications as prescribed, but make sure you're taking them well before bedtime if you know they cause reflux. So those are the common things. What can a doctor do before we go into? I've got lots of questions here, but what can a doctor do for reflux besides the lifestyle issues? We may prescribe an antacid. There's Gaviscon, there's Malox, there's lots of things on the market. Remedies. These are basically neutralizing alkali substance. So we may give you an acid blocking agent, which is called omeprazole or one of these things. But remember, though, it's always important. Reflux often, 9 times out of 10, is telling you you're doing the wrong things in terms of lack of exercise, in terms of eating late, eating large food, in terms of eating foods that cause and trigger your stuff. So the things to do is prevention is better than cure.
Well, I had a question because I was looking at how sometimes people ignore obviously heartburn symptoms. What happens if you ignore it to the point where there's when do you get to no return? That's my question.
That's a really good question. And in a few cases, it can become so severe it actually burns the end of your gullet, which connects to the stomach. And that constant reflux actually causes scarring of that part of the gullet, and then you have difficulty in swallowing. So one of the things I was going to talk about, or rather when to see a doctor, is if your lifestyle changes and pharmacy medicines are not helping, if you have heartburn continuously in spite of lifestyle changes for more than, I'd say, 2 weeks, or if you find that food is getting stuck in your throat, then you need to go and see a doctor, because sometimes we need to put a little camera down to see whether you've got such bad scarring. And in some people, that scar can actually turn into cancer. That's Barrett's esophagus, where basically you just keep scarring that issue. If you keep traumatizing something, eventually it becomes sinister. So that's the consequence of ignoring the heartburn and ignoring lifestyle issues, because I think majority do our lifestyle. So I often say, try not to take your Gaviscon and your Malox and your acid blocking agents. I'll go upstream and ask, what am I doing that's wrong?
Definitely.
Yeah, somebody's asked here, what are natural things that I can do to relieve heartburn? I'm glad our listeners are talking to about natural things first. Well, eat a ripe banana. Bananas are alkali. They actually help the bowels move better. Keep a food journal, I say, so that you can avoid trigger foods and resist the urge to eat, to overeat or eat quickly. Some people eat so fast that the stomach hasn't got time, and avoid late meals. Women out there who love wearing tight things, wear loose-fitting clothes and adjust your sleep position. So that's important. Somebody's asked, does drinking water help heartburn? Yes, it does. Taking small sips of water, particularly warm water, can help it. And of course, we've talked about the fact that beverages such as coffee and soda and acidic juices may actually get it worse. Somebody's asked a common thing, and I wanted to sort of demystify this. Does milk help heartburn? Yes, it can temporarily buffer the stomach acid, but remember there are nutrients in milk, particularly fat, which can actually stimulate more acid. So you may actually not get what you may think is an important solution. And somebody's asked about stress. We've talked about stress. Why does heartburn get worse at night? It's because you're lying down and you've not got gravity to push the food down into the digestive system. So lying down, it basically leaks all the acid up there. So have lots of pillows if you get heartburn. And somebody's asked here, what can I drink for acid reflux? Well, you can drink alkali things like ginger. These things keep coming up for lots of conditions. Ginger tea, peppermint tea, fruits like bananas, plant-based milks like almond milk. These neutralize the acid, and avoid citrus juices, particularly at night, and alcohol. So those are the things that happen. Somebody's asked a really strange question. I'm going to answer it because it's a favorite of mine. Is Coke good for indigestion? I think this listener keeps asking about Coke. No, Coke is not good for anything. And Coke is not good for heartburn. In fact, Coke is very acidic, and carbonated drinks like Coke can make a nightmare of heartburn, particularly if you take it frequently and at night.
Yes, Dr. B, sorry, you kind of broke off there. I'm so sorry. You kind of broke off there. It was cutting, but I'm sure the listener heard you.
Somebody's asked here, what fruit or banana melon actually helps heartburn? Somebody's asked here, one more question.
Yes.
Is ice cream good for heartburn? Milk and dairy products, like I said, are high in fat and tend to make heartburn worse. The cold dairy products like ice cream can usually numb the acid, but it doesn't actually do anything to reflux. And somebody's asked, what about lemon? And I said, yes, well, lemon is very acidic, and small amounts mixed with water can have an alkalizing effect, but, all these citrus fruits are not good for you, so this is important. Somebody's asked, I've been taking acid-blocking pills for more than 3 years because of repeated reflux. Is this dangerous? Well, acid-blocking, remember, nature puts acid in your stomach for a reason.
Yes.
And if you block it continuously, you suffer from indigestion. You may not absorb certain things. Vitamin B12 is not manufactured well. We know that acid-blocking pills can actually affect your kidneys and can drop absorption of compounds like magnesium. So people who pop them like pills, and there are lots of them out there that take heartburn pills on a regular basis. If you've not stopped your lifestyle issues that cause it, lost weight, eating early, and you continue using heartburn pills, you may be doing yourself a disfavor.
Yes. Well, Dr. Baggett, I also just have one last question before you go. I read something on your gut health and it connecting obviously to women more because we keep a lot of things like, our womb is here, everything is here. What kind of advice would you have for women that are actually suffering with a lot of gut issues?
Oh, that's a big subject, and we're going to cover that one because that's a really good question, and you're absolutely right, and it's one of my favorite topics. And so I'm going to devote maybe even 2 episodes to that one. But next week, what we're going to be talking about is the master organ in the gastrointestinal system, and that is the liver. The Chinese and ancient cultures have long known that the liver is a major organ of health in the body, and it's your major detoxifier, it's your factory. And what happens if it goes wrong, we're going to discuss next week.
All right. No, Dr. B, I'm excited for that. Also excited to have First Capital Bank with us again.
Health Check was proudly brought to you by First Capital Bank. Belief comes first.